Hi, hope you've had a really great day. I'm here back with chapter 10. The golden-eyed man came closer, drowning Wildboy in his shadow. Calmly, he slotted his false eyeball back into its socket and shook his head to settle it in place. He smoothed back his silver hair. "It is very important," he said, "that you remain calm." The last thing Wildboy felt was calm. Lashing out a leg, he kicked the cage bars. "I don't know who you are, but you don't come no closer," he warned. "I'm a monster, ain't you heard? It was me what had done the professor, and I'll do you too if you come any closer." A slight smile flashed across the man's tight face. "No," he said, "you will not, because you are lying." "I heard what you told the ringmaster about these marks in the mud and the noise of the horses. It was unexpected. You have quite the gift of observation. I wonder whether you could actually have convinced those men of your innocence had you not been so busy being angry." Wildboy's shoulders pressed against the cold cage bars. "Who are you?" "A man has been killed. I rode here as soon as I heard." "Rode? You came by steamboat?" Again, that flicker of a smile. "Interesting," the man said. "Did you observe the patch of soot on my sleeve from the ship's funnel, or the ticket stub there in my pocket?" Wildboy had seen both, as well as several other clues about the man. He could tell that he had recently become a bachelor after several years of marriage, and that he had lived in India, but currently resided in London, somewhere near the river. He knew he had a pistol inside his coat, a knife in his shoe, and he was fairly sure there was a sword concealed inside his walking cane, but none of them told him who this person was. He said nothing. "Very well," the man said. "Then I shall tell you what I know." He brought out a slim black notebook from his coat and withdrew from it a crumpled sheet of paper. "You recognise this letter?" he asked. Wildboy shook his head, but he did recognise it. It was the warning letter he'd left in the professor's van. "This letter was composed by a colleague of mine," the man said. "He was relieved of it at this fair last night by a pair of thieves. When he informed me of this, he made a reference to a hand covered in hair, which seemed strange at the time. I ain't no thief, and I ain't never seen that letter." "Look closer," the man said, and he tossed the letter into the cage. Wildboy snatched it up and stuffed it into his pocket. If he somehow got out of here, that letter could help prove his innocence. He looked up, spotting something move along one of the stable rafters. At first he thought it was a cat, and then he saw a flash of red hair. Clarissa crouched high on the narrow rafter, silhouetted against the glare of the man's lantern. She was watching. "You are lying to me," the man said. "Let me tell you the truth. You stole that letter, and you established to whom it was addressed. The burn marks, perhaps, provided the telling clue. You decided to deliver the message to Professor Wollstonecraft. It does, after all, warn of a threat upon his life, but you were too late." He turned so that light from his lantern fell over the professor's body. "You saw poor Henry die." Wildboy felt cold at the memory. He looked up, but Clarissa was gone. I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Then let me enlighten you." The man turned to a page of his notebook and held it open. "Look at this." There was a drawing in the book similar to the sketch that Wildboy had seen in the professor's caravan. He edged fractionally forward, scared but curious. It was a diagram of the same scientific device, wheels and pipes and interconnecting cogs, all sickeningly connected to human heads. "What is that?" he said. The stable door shuddered as the porters pounded against its outside. "Your 5 minutes are up," Mary Everett called. "Open this door." The golden-eyed man tapped the drawing in his book. For the first time, a note of urgency crept into his voice. "There was a similar drawing hidden in the professor's caravan. Now there is not. It is imperative that I find out who stole it." Wildboy's mind raced. The hooded man must have taken the drawing. That was why he'd dumped the body here in the stables, so he could search the professor's van without being seen. The porters banged harder on the stable door. Wildboy had to take a chance. "All right, listen," he said. "I did see the drawing. It was in the professor's van. I was only there to leave that letter, not to steal nothing. That was when I saw the killer, the hooded man." The man's jaw tightened. A silver hair fell in front of his false eye and he slicked it back. "The hooded man? That's who killed the professor. He must have taken the drawing and all." "Who was he?" "You think I'd be here if I knew that? I didn't see his face, nor nothing else of the bloke. He walked funny like he was hurt, and he wore a mask like them ones what... Did he speak? Yeah, he spoke." "What did he say?" "I don't know. Something about some machine." The The hair slipped again over the man's eyes, but this time he let it hang. He looked back to Professor Wollstonecraft's corpse. "Then it is true," he said. "What's true?" Wildboy said. "Only thing that's true is I'm about to get hung. I told you what I know, so get me out of here." The man tucked his notebook away and brought out a slim leather pouch that was folded shut like an envelope. "It is imperative," he said, "that I identify this hooded man. I told you everything I know." "No, you told me everything you think you know." The man opened the pouch. Something glinted inside. A syringe. "What's that?" Wildboy said. "What's that for?" "You are afraid," the man said. "You are not thinking clearly. I suspect you saw more than you remember." The syringe's bronze tip reflected in his golden eye, and pale liquid dripped from the needle point. "This drug will make you remember." If Wildboy hadn't been so scared, he might have laughed. There was no way he was letting anyone stick him with a needle. He scrambled back, kicking again at the bars. "Get back! Don't you touch me with that thing!" "It will be less painful if it enters your arm," the man said. "But it does not have to." Another thump shook the stable doors. "Give us the boy," one of the porters yelled. "Showman's law for him." Wildboy turned in the cage, searching desperately for the floorboard nail he'd dropped. He saw it on the straw outside the cage, but it was too far to reach. Only one other plan came to mind. Shifting around, he slid his coat down to offer the man a hairy, trembling shoulder. "All right," he said. "Use your needle, but stick it in my arm like you said." The golden-eyed man hesitated, suspicious, but he wasn't missing his chance. Holding the syringe steady, he leaned closer. "I am afraid," he said, "that this will hurt." Wildboy braced, waiting. He had to time this just right. Now! He slammed his palm into the loose end of the floorboard. The other end shot up through the bars and caught the man hard on the chin. The man's golden eyeball fell from his face as he toppled back and collapsed to the floor. Again the porters banged to the doors. The rafters shook. The horses stamped and reared in their stalls. Wildboy lay flat in the cage and reached for the nail. If he could grab it, maybe he could just pick the lock to the cage. His fingers were tantalizingly close, but it was just beyond his grasp. "Come on," he begged. "Please." And then, thump! 2 feet landed on the straw beside the nail. Clarissa. Beneath a long dark coat, the red and gold sequins of her circus costume shimmered in the lamplight. She looked at Wildboy, and her tongue flickered nervously across her broken tooth. "I heard what you said about the hooded man," she said. "You didn't snitch on me to my mother. You could have, but you didn't." Wildboy gripped the bars, his heart surging with fresh hope. "Yeah, so now you're going to get me out of here?" Clarissa looked at the stable door, heard her mother order the porters to smash it down. She touched the bruise on her face, scared, unsure. "Clarissa, I swear I won't tell your mother. She won't beat you or—" "Shut your head about my mother. She ain't never beaten me." Wildboy knew she was lying. He had to convince her that this was bigger than the fight between her and her mother. He knew that, as well as being an acrobat, Clarissa's father had performed escape artist tricks in the circus show. Perhaps he'd taught her some of his skills. "Clarissa, see that rope? Your mother's going to hang me from it. She's going to hang me, Clarissa. Please use that nail. Try to open the lock." "It won't work," Clarissa said. "What?" "That lock's a Smithson. I can't pick a Smithson with a nail." Wildboy swore, kicked the bars. "Try, will you, please?" "Won't work with a nail," Clarissa insisted. She slid a leather pouch from her coat pocket. "I got my father's old lockpicks, though." Wildboy stared for a second. Had she always intended to rescue him? He banged a hand on the bars, delighted. "That's great! Now use them!" Her hands shook as she selected 2 of the thin iron slips from the pouch and slid them into the lock. Metal rattled against metal. "Hurry," Wildboy urged. "I'm hurrying." "I know, but hurry faster." And then, clunk, the lock turned. Wildboy cried out in joy as the cage door swung free. He leaped through and landed beside Clarissa in the straw. And then the stable door burst open. The porters staggered inside, stopping when they saw the scene. The golden-eyed man, unconscious on the ground, Wildboy free from the cage, and Clarissa beside him, with the lockpicks in her hand. Mary Everett stood among them, staring, aghast. Again, Wildboy thought he saw the ringmaster's hard eyes soften, as if she was fighting against a kinder person inside. Then she looked at her daughter with the freak. Clarissa reached out a shaking hand. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Mother," she said, "I—" "Get them," the ringmaster growled. "Get both of them." Wild Boy couldn't leave Clarissa, not after what she'd just done. He grabbed her arm to pull her with him, but she resisted. Still, she stared at her mother as the ringmaster approached with the mob. "Come on," Wild Boy said. "I know a way out." But now something grasped the tail of his coat. It was the golden-eyed man. His silver hair hung around his face, and blood oozed from a cut above his empty eye socket. "Do not run," he said. "You are in danger, great danger." Wild Boy tore free and ran for the wall. Clarissa followed, fleeing for her life from her own mother. "Go," Wild Boy said, pushing her through the hole in the wood. As he climbed after her, he heard the golden-eyed man crying out, and he knew the man was right. They were indeed in great danger, and now they had to run.